Morning, folks. As we wait for folks to stream in here a little bit late on this Valentine's Day and Super Bowl Monday, I'm going to just go ahead and provide a really quick introduction that comes from the Atlanta Fed here of the issue that we'll be dealing with. And I think you'll hear more details on this particular case later on in the presentation.
What do you think of when you think of the American dream? It means different things for different people, but for Leah, a 25-year-old single mother of two, working a low-wage job at a theater concession stand, that dream is to become a nurse, an opportunity occupation in her hometown, offering a salary higher than the median wage. Becoming a nurse could also place Leah on a path with options for professional advancement and help her provide a better life for herself and her family. As Leah starts her journey, costs like educational fees and higher taxes on Leah's pay can actually cause a dip in her income. But over time, Leah's future looks brighter. After taxes, her lifetime earnings are higher. That's part of the American dream, right? Unfortunately, Leah's situation isn't this simple. Like many workers earning low wages, Leah receives public assistance to pay for food, medical care, childcare, and housing. As Leah's income grows, she'll lose access to those benefits. Often, this occurs before she makes enough money to cover her full expenses herself. An entire decade could pass before Leah begins to break even. And as a result, for most of her children's lives, Leah's standard of living will actually be lower. This forces Leah to choose between her children's best interests and her own brighter future. Financial barriers like these can be so daunting. Some people in Leah's situation will give up on their dreams or experience too many barriers to achieve them. This devastating combination of increased pay and the resulting loss of support is called the benefits cliff, and it's a significant obstacle for workers seeking a better life. And make no mistake about it, while Leah is depicted here as an animated character, her story is based on real-life challenges faced by many Americans. As a taxpayer, Leah's situation also impacts you. If Leah could move from her current job to becoming a nurse, the combination of her increased tax contributions and a reduction in her taxpayer-funded support could recover hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars over the course of her lifetime. Employers, educators, nonprofits, policymakers, and others could work together on solutions that provide opportunities and pathways, pairing people like Leah with businesses in need of skilled talent, while allowing Leah to work toward financial security for herself and her family. Informed by sound research and thoughtful policy, the right partners could create a win-win situation, empowering Americans like Leah to avoid the perils of the benefits cliff, saving taxpayers money, and increasing the odds Leah, her children, and the rest of us can make all of our American dreams come true.
Well, good morning again to folks that joined us while that brief overview of the issue we're talking about today was rolling. Really appreciative if you could all join us on this lovely Monday morning and talk about this incredible, with this incredible panel about this really substantive issue. I'm going to hand things over to Kathy Davis, our president at the Lake Champlain Chamber.
Morning, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope your team won last night. So as you know, the Chamber's mission is advocating for economic opportunity. And one of the things that we do is to inform policymakers on issues that can create more economic opportunities. So we're really excited to bring this issue to you today and be able to bring our business community into the process of thinking about this issue and hopefully making some positive change. It is my pleasure this morning to introduce John Dwyer, who is with New England Federal Credit Union. NEFCU is a generous sponsor of our breakfast series, and we're pleased to have you all with us and pleased to have John here.
Hi, thanks, Kathy, and thanks as well for participating this morning. It probably came early for a lot of us. I We at NEFCU have been proud to support the Lake Champlain Chamber's breakfast series for many years. We believe that these are opportunities that the Chamber provides all of us to engage with state leaders, as we often do in these breakfasts, but also important issues like we are this morning. So it is our hope that you value these opportunities, and we appreciate the efforts of Kathy and Austin and all of the Chamber's team in keeping these meetings so important to all of us. So thanks, and we look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, John. I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter today, Dr. David Altig, he's the Executive Vice President and Director of Research at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. In addition to advising the bank president on monetary policy and related matters, Dr. Altig oversees the bank's research division, which includes the bank's team of economists, the Regional Economic Information Network, the bank's Community and Economic Development function. In this role, he leads the Atlanta Fed's research and engagement portfolio on benefits cliffs. He also serves as a member of the bank's Executive Leadership Committee, Discount Committee, and Executive Leadership Team for bank's Economic Mobility and Resiliency Strategic Priority, and is executive co-sponsor of the bank's Working Families Employee Resource Network. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here this morning, bright and early. Maybe the only thing that gets me out in operation this early is to be able to talk about benefits cliffs, because it has become sort of a focal point of many of our efforts outside of the usual monetary policy stuff here at the bank. So I'm going to share my screen and hope that it is working fine. Can you see it?
Looks good, Dave. Okay,
thank you. There's always this awkward silence when you share your screen and you say, "Can you see it?" and then you can't see anybody. So you've actually met some of our work and in that video that Austin shared at the beginning, and thanks for doing that. So I will be a little bit redundant here up front, just to kind of articulate in a little bit more detail what went into that, but we'll try to get through it expeditiously, because I always enjoy being with our friends from and colleagues from the LEAP Fund, so I'll make sure that I give Karen her due time. So again, we think of these benefits cliffs fairly broadly, and actually this work kind of emanated from analysis we were doing on tax policy and the recognition that what effectively benefits phase outs do is they create very large tax disincentives for individuals who are on public assistance. So we're going to think about not just the true cliff, which is the complete phase out or elimination of public assistance as income increases, but more broadly as any reduction in benefits that results from income gains that may mitigate the effectiveness of public assistance programs we're trying to implement and create disincentives for workforce development and career enhancement. So I'm going to focus on this notion, which you saw in the picture of net resources. So we're always going to be thinking about total receipts that a household earns less what they have to pay out of their pocket just to live. So those total receipts include income that they earn in the market and any public assistance. And of course, that's where the benefits cliff problem lives. And we're going, and then subtract from that taxes that they must pay to the government, and then a set of basic expenses, which are on food, transportation, medical care, housing, and so on. So you may kind of want to think of these as something like the United Way Alice expenses. So you're probably familiar with this sort of typical picture that we showed to depict benefits cliffs, where we simply kind of think about an increasing amount of income down along the horizontal axis here from left to right, and then plot against that that notion of net resources that I just described to you, and are looking for something that identifies where the benefits cliffs are. So this is an example from Fulton County, because we are talking about basic expenses and we are talking about state policies. It depends where you live. So this is a particular example from Fulton County for a family, I believe like Leah, a single adult with a couple young children. And as you can see, this is very far from a one-to-one correspondence between employment income earned and net resources available to the economy. And you see these cliffs, these abrupt drop-offs in family net resources as benefits are eliminated with higher income. But you also see, which are just as interesting and vital to thinking about the problem, these benefit plateaus, these periods of time where even though your market income is rising, your net resources aren't increasing at all. So essentially, if I go back to this sort of notion of this looking like a tax problem, these families are facing something like 100% tax rates if their incomes rise through the ranges where these plateaus take place. So our first orientation here at the Atlanta Fed is in the context of workforce development. So we're actually thinking in terms of investments that families may make in human capital development and skill acquisition, and asking this question, how do these benefit cliff problems create disincentives to engage in these types of expenses? So we want to look at how a family's resources change over time due to obtaining education, training, or experience. Now, we're often asked whether or not these problems are real and how extensive they are. So we're very fond of sort of looking to evidence from the actual decision makers in the economy, that is employers and employees or potential employees. So here's the results of a survey from Ohio, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce Research Foundation in particular, not too long ago in 2019, so just before the pandemic, where they ask employers, have they seen situations where employees or candidates for employment were unwilling to accept job, increase work hours, or other advancement because they feared they would lose government benefits. And nearly 1 in 6 of the businesses surveyed said yes. In the state of Alabama, there was a large survey of underemployed, that is basically people in low wage jobs, and unemployed individuals, asking them if they had actually themselves delayed a job opportunity or declined a job because they were afraid of losing some kind of benefit. And again, you see, sorry about that. You see more than a third of the individuals responding said that in fact they had. So we like to point out that this is not hypothetical and it's quantitatively significant, this problem of the benefits cliff. So I'm going to share with you some of the tools that we've used to support individual groups in partnerships to address their own issues with benefit cliffs in a variety of different types of projects and questions. At the basis of this, and this is what you saw in the layup presentation, is this Cliff software. It is essentially a tax planning piece of software that we've engineered to be relevant to individuals on public assistance. It is supported by these two other basic building blocks, our policy rules database, which is a database that includes all major federal tax and assistance programs and all major state tax and assistance programs for every state in the country. So what it is it builds in eligibility rules so that we can actually do the analysis for particular people or for particular cases. And then along with that, because we are thinking about net resources, is this cost of living database that I described, which is county by county in the United States, a database of these basic expenses on, as I said, transportation, healthcare, food, and so forth. So these are sort of the building blocks. They reside on our website, and you can kind of take a look at demos of them access them. But I want to show you sort of how they work together. So we have a suite of tools actually that are designed for different use cases. One of them is the dashboard, which is actually what you saw in the Leah example, and I'll go over that pretty quickly. There's this but it's largely used for modeling career choices for hypothetical family types in particular locations. An offshoot of that, there are actually two offshoots of that here, the Cliff Planner, which is more of a budgeting resource for career planning and is more individualized to individual circumstances. And then a similar one, which we call the Dashboard Employer Edition, which is customized to actually employer job pathways rather than kind of general area-wide career pathways. And then we have a set of things that we do related to policy, and I'll show you those as well. One of them is the Guaranteed Income Dashboard, but I want to show you kind of the whole set of policy-related, not the whole set, but a couple of the policy-related analyses that we are focusing on with this Cliff suite of tools. So just very briefly, you met Leah and her circumstances. She wants to move on from a minimum wage job or near minimum wage job to a career in nursing. And you saw this picture. So what this picture really is, or you saw something like this picture, which is again for a particular area. There is information on local wages and a wide set of different career opportunities. And this describes what Leah's circumstances might look like if she enters in one of two sort of occupations in 2021 and then continues on gaining experience and gaining the wage increases associated with that experience based on local wages for these two positions, cashier position and the nursing assistant position. And so this is sort of the beginning of a standard workforce development conversation about alternative careers that might be contemplated by any given individual. But of course, there's this problem that does not map nicely into net resources due to taxes, loss of public assistance. And what this Cliff tool does is it generates now over Leah's next 25 years from today, what those paths look like, taking in the full circumstances of her life, including the benefits cliff, including basic expense changes and so on. So unlike that static picture I showed you at the beginning, in this case, we are actually embedding into the analysis Leah's changing life circumstances, which includes the aging of her children and the implication of that for both expenses and public assistance. So this is from the Cliff dashboard specifically, and you can actually go up, as I said, on the website and pull this down and generate pictures like this. The Cliff Planner that I described is one where rather than using sort of the average circumstances on expenses or even the average wage trajectory. You can input for any given individual their specific wage and expense considerations, and then plot out sort of a 5-year picture that is suitable for financial planning over the very near term. And the employer dashboard version of it is very similar in that it is customizable to the career trajectories and pathways that an employer might be offering to their employees, including things like benefit packages, which may or may not be taxable, which may or may not enter into the calculation of eligibility for public assistance, and then allow some capacity for employers to think about their own value proposition, as well as to think about how they might resolve some of the problems through their configuration of their salaries and benefit packages, if it seems likely that their employees are going to face some of these benefit cliff problems. So that's sort of the initial cliff suite of things. I do want to spend a minute here on just talking about the policy elements of these tools that we've developed. So here's one which was actually alluded to in the little Leah clip that was shown at the beginning, where we can look over a lifetime or we can look over subsets of periods in the life of someone like Leah and ask two questions. Well, what is, if Leah moves from a minimum wage job to this nursing assistant job, what are her cumulative gains in present value sense? And that's the orange bars over a 3-year horizon, a 5-year horizon, a 10-year horizon. But as I said, because this is essentially a software which was designed for tax analysis, we can also kick out what the return to the taxpayer is if Leah makes this jump and makes this investment in her own human capital. And we see pictures like this all the time in all sorts of circumstances that the return to the taxpayer can be quite substantial. So this would be the return just from this one person, Leah, from making her successful in her transition to a better career. And also, we typically note that the return to the taxpayer is higher than the return to the individual, which creates sort of a wedge between the private incentives to engage in skill acquisition to an individual and the public's interest in seeing that skill acquisition takes place. So this is a major sort of public policy conundrum and challenge. So we've taken all this and we've sort of specialized it to different circumstances, policy circumstances and questions. So one of them was on that list I showed you earlier, our guaranteed income dashboard, where we're partnering now with, 16 or 17 groups doing localized guaranteed income pilots. And what this version of the tool does is it allows you to put in, obviously, the location, the family type, what the guaranteed income program is itself, and then a collection of information on incomes, assets, assistance received, expenses, as a way to perhaps, they're using it in different ways, but one way to use this is to screen who is going to be most likely positive candidate for the pilot, as well as to figure out where kind of gaps need to be filled and wraparound services need to be provided. So what you see on the left is some of the output from that dashboard, where here we're thinking about a $6,000 guaranteed income program. And you see sort of in that top bar where actually the net return to someone participating in this program who's receiving Section 8 SNAP and WIC benefits would be negative. So this is a real problem with regard to the success for this sort of program. There's another sort of analysis we do, which is more specialized to specific policy interventions. So this is one from Florida, and it is looking at the county by county implications of the CCDF program, Child Care Development Fund, child care assistance. And you see a couple things here. You see essentially the circumstances in 2 different counties in Florida. And of course, this is important because there's not in the program itself much consideration for the cutoff rates, which are geared to state median income and not county median income. And county incomes differ quite substantially everywhere. So for the high cost county, Palm Beach, we're comparing it to a more rural and lower cost county, Hillsborough. And you can see kind of the differences in the copay schedules. And then you can see sort of what the out-of-pocket cost end up being for each individual at the cliff. This is sort of the inverse of the cliff, the point at which the copays become 100%, and what the implication for that is an individual living in each county. And I will say that the paper this is related to, and you'll have the slides if you would like them, and you can click on the paper itself, but what it does is it actually models out specific policy interventions that might mitigate the cliff, which might more normalize across counties and so on. So we have, I'm going to wrap up here. We have a variety of partners of very different sorts: nonprofits, state partners, institute government partners, employer partnerships, colleges and universities, and develop these tools based upon the specific use cases that individual products require. Be glad to talk to anyone on this call about that further, but at this point, let me stop sharing and I will turn it over to Karen.
Thank you, Dave. We'll have some time for a question and answer after Karen's portion of the morning. But before, I just want to introduce Karen real quick. Karen is the founder and CEO of the Lead Fund. And a product strategist. She's worked on projects for Samsung, Target, Verizon, Meetup, Spotify, and the American Medical Association, as well as many others, and was the lead product at Vote Run Lead, which trains women to run for office. She received her MFA from the School of Visual Arts and her BA from Binghamton University. She is a fellow at the Sterling Network, whose mission is to enhance economic mobility across New York City, as well as a fellow and member of the Good Work Guild, focusing on economic security and labor market transformation technologies. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Karen, and we'll take it away.
Thanks so much for having me. And Dave, a pleasure as always to see more about the work that you're doing. Shoshana Martyr, our program manager, is going to be helping out on the slides this morning. So thanks, Shoshana. So yes, it's true. I'm Karen. I'm the founder at Lead Fund, and thanks so much for having us this morning. So I will spend a little time on the problem space, even though I know we've covered it a bit. I just wanted to highlight a few of the areas and lift up what Dave has already covered, as those are key parts of what we focus on as well. So knowing that Austin had reached out to us because he had identified that benefits cliffs were going to be a big topic of conversation for you all this year. These can often be a hidden problem that folks don't know about. Benefits cliff, simply put, is earning more in wages, but losing public benefits that were worth much more. So The biggest thing that I wanted to lift up from what Dave had talked about was that no one knows if they're going to hit a benefits cliff until after it's already happened. So this has huge implications for folks. You know, for what we've seen in early numbers from our own tools, we actually ask folks if they've ever heard about benefits cliff before, and around 20% had heard of benefits cliffs. So that means 80% of folks don't even know that this is a thing that could affect them. But of those that did know about it, over 50% had turned down jobs out of fear of hitting a cliff. So this is a huge, massive gap in understanding, and also huge problem that is affecting decision making. So we also are highlighting the Ohio Chamber of Commerce study, which is, 20% of employers are seeing that benefits cliffs are affecting their workers. This also assumes that the employers know, which often they don't. And I'm curious to see how these numbers would look in a pandemic world, as this study was done pre-pandemic. This is also a problem that's disproportionately affecting women, as 2.4 million have left their jobs, which is a 30-year low for women in the workforce. And benefits cliffs may be a big factor in attracting them back to the workplace. So I just wanted to dive into what we're doing over at Leaf Fund. So we are solely focused on anticipating and solving for benefits cliffs. That's all we do. We're obsessed with benefits cliffs. This is our whole focus of everything we work on. So we wanted to talk about two programs that we have with you this morning, sort of focused on different audiences. So the first one is for coaching organizations, which is our coaching program, and the second is for employers around assessment. So diving into our coaching program, this can be helpful for identifying benefits cliffs. So we train coaches who use our resources and tools with their clients. Coaches can mean anything from financial coaches, workforce development training coaches, social workers, case managers, housing coaches. It really spans the gamut. This knowledge alone doesn't actually solve for the benefits cliff, but we know that it can be useful in decision-making for benefits recipients across the country. We're currently working with 40 partners across the country in a private beta program, and we'll be looking to expand that in the coming months. We don't go directly to our end user, which is the public benefits recipient. We actually invest in coaches because we want to make sure that this is a conversation that can happen around this decision making. Folks don't actually have a place to go to talk about benefits cliffs. So we've invested in making sure that this can be a positive, productive conversation around what's possible for someone's ambitions and goals. So what does this actually look like? We train coaches to not just use our tools, but also in facilitating these benefits cliff conversations. These can be really tricky conversations to navigate. Many coaches that we've talked to have said, hey, I'm aware of benefits cliffs, but I've never talked about this with my client because it's super demotivating. Want to keep them really focused on the end game. And I would be introducing a big scary into the room that I don't really have a way to talk about. We also give access to our tools to help clients discover benefits cliffs and benefits eligibility, and then also resources around helping a client plan for their future. So just sharing what we had heard from one of our partners in December, that it had provided new ways to talk about this in their coaching environment, and gave some clear and understandable results and next steps. So the whole goal for this program: facilitate benefits conversations, find benefits cliffs with clients and some benefits eligibility, and then empower that client's decision-making going forward. The second program we have is specific to employers. I know this is a Chamber of Commerce, many employers here. This is a way to sort of tackle what, knowing that workers may be hesitant to take a job or a raise in fear of losing public benefits, and knowing that benefits cliffs may be stalling out that career progress. We've got a workforce assessment. So this quite simply is a smaller engagement, and the goal is to offer a general benefits cliff understanding and upskill everyone around a shared understanding of benefits cliffs and their impacts in the workplace. An analysis that is bespoke to the company to uncover the scope of the problem within the workforce using our tools, and better understanding how many workers have the potential to hit benefits cliffs and are likely making decisions out of fear of hitting one. And then a planning session to plan next steps of how to address the issue. We know that benefits cliffs can impact the ability to attract and retain talent, and our goal is to discuss and plan those next steps based on what we learned in the assessment. So for that program, it's really around making sure that everyone is upskilled in the organization around the overall issue, proactively assessing what's happening specific to your workforce, and then coming up with a game plan together to address the issue. The next thing I just wanted to dive into really quickly is how we create our products. So everything that we do employs human-centered, user-centered design. So what that means is that we've designed everything that we've made, every program, every product, every process, in conjunction with those that are most affected by benefits cliffs. So we put our users at the core of everything we do. And those users are public benefits recipients, coaches and coaching organizations that are delivering services, and employers that have workers facing this issue. So what does this mean? Actually, here's a crazy looking infographic. What it means is we actually roll in feedback at every stage. You'll notice that there are arrows that point back to go back, incorporate feedback, go back, incorporate feedback. And that's essentially what we're doing in every bit of our process. So what this looks like for us is user research, user feedback one-on-one. We run focus groups, we do surveys, and we actually facilitate conversations between our partners to best address the needs of everyone that is affected by this, literally. Lastly, on our other projects, the last one I wanted to highlight is we, like the Atlanta Fed, are looking to eliminate benefits cliffs. Our ultimate goal is to remove the problem altogether through policy change so that benefits cliffs don't occur, benefits recipients aren't making decisions out of fear, and it's as if they never existed in the first place. So in this past year, we, like the Atlanta Fed, testified to Congress about the perils of benefits cliffs. We've been mentioned New York Times, Counter, and we're really looking to bring broader awareness to the issue and use all of the data and results that we have to further push and nudge policy. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much. This is our website. You can get in touch with me, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you, Karen. So now we have some time for Q&A. We're ahead of schedule, so we'll have plenty of time to hear from both these speakers who are, at the forefront of really tackling these issues. So feel free to raise your virtual hand or put a message in the chat. You could try to raise your physical hand if you can't find your virtual hand. I do have a couple screens going, so it might be harder to see. I guess I would start out and just say, again, thank you so much for joining us this morning, talking about this important issue with us, lending your perspective. I want to talk a little bit about a finer point that was made earlier by Dave. You mentioned benefits cliffs, not just as assistance, but also our larger tax policy. And I think that's something that at least in my experience with our conversations in Vermont, we've talked about maybe childcare assistance or food assistance. However, we've kind of stopped the conversation once we get into the median household income range and start talking about things such as childcare or childcare, child dependent care credits as tax policy. Can you talk a little bit more about just the kind of transition to the tax policy side of benefits as well?
Yeah, so our orientation from the beginning of this, and as I sort of alluded to, it was really the initial motivation for our diving into this work, is to think of the benefits cliff problem as coming from public assistance, means tested public assistance programs as an integrated tax problem. So, I'm a macroeconomist. So, and there's always a lecture where you say, hey, here's how you need to think about taxes. You have to think about taxes as the difference between what you hand over to the government and what the government hands back to you. And kind of for most of us, the typical example of where you have both of those pieces operating at the same time is Social Security benefits. So we don't really kind of separate this notion of taxation between in the formal analysis and the toolkit. There's no real separation between the public assistance part and the outright tax part. So everything that we have sort of in place could, be is relevant and can be used for an individual who's receiving no public assistance whatsoever, but just is facing a outright kind of high marginal tax issue that they need to plan through. So I think that when you take this on in that sort of integrated way, it kind of resonate. I often talk to business groups, and to the business groups I say, well, look, if you were facing 100% tax rate, how would that affect your incentives? Well, look, here are a lot of people who are facing 100% tax rates or even potentially higher, and they are reacting exactly the same way you would. So if you were mainly interested in kind of the differential sorts of tax policies and tax reforms, actually these tools could be implemented in an equally effective way to address those sorts of policy questions.
One other thing I'll just add to support exactly what Dave's saying, they have been out there actually talking early and often about marginal tax rates. I'm going to post in the chat. There's also Health and Human Services, a version of talking about marginal tax rates. They have a whole series, which I just posted. It's one of the links we have on benefitscliff.com. We have a ton of resources that link to what Dave does, and also many other really smart humans that are working on Benefits Cliff. It's a resource we wish we had when we had started, and it didn't exist. So we wanted to make sure that it existed for anyone else. So if marginal tax rates are your jam, there is stuff there for you.
Yeah, and I will say the HHS stuff is fantastic. It's really, really good work.
We have a couple questions in the chat. I'll invite David to unmute and ask his question he put in the chat. And then Sarah, you can get ready for going after him.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentations. And as a former policymaker who may want to get into government again, I ask about if you have evidence or examples from other states where some efforts have been made to reduce the benefits cliff or even eliminate it, but at the same time, obviously help the employees on an upward trajectory financially and help the state or taxpayers on a downward trajectory on expenses, but turning it more into slopes than having, moments where there's sudden adjustments. And I recognize that in most cases, this means more complicated formulas for government programs, but it seems as though without adding that complication or a lot of money to eliminate the bowl, which in Dave's early graph looked like it was from about 25 to 60,000, and in Vermont it's typically somewhere in that range, where it's a disincentive. Do you have some examples where states have implemented something?
You want to start, Karen?
No, you can take that. I mean, so I'll tee this up by like taking a step back and saying that there's a lot of work to be done, even in addressing. We've got a federal system, a state system, and then a local system, and we need to start to address the fact that these things need to be interoperable, that people need to be able to access them through a understandable way, like a portal or something that allows them to simply see exactly what's happening for each of these benefits at each of these levels. And lastly, I'll just put out there, nobody's tracking how many people hit benefits cliffs. Like, that's bananas. Like, we are tracking how many people get new jobs. We are not tracking how many people are turning down jobs. And past that, why? So what you've got is me and Dave out here screaming from the rooftops that really this is a big problem that needs to be addressed. And what we're trying to do, both of our organizations, put more quantitative and qualitative data behind it. But ultimately, you've got a gap of knowledge right now. And one of the big initiatives that I also am pushing for is doing a study about benefits cliffs from a federal level, even at the state level. I've advocated for that here in my home state of New York State, to understand the size and scope of the problem writ large. So I'm gonna pass it over to Dave, who I'm sure has other recommendations as well.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to say what was implicit in Karen's response there, which is we actually don't have a whole ton of evidence at this point on what works and what doesn't. I mean, Colorado was very early on in addressing this problem and attempting some pilots to mitigate the benefits cliff problem. I don't know that that was totally successful. Right now, both Karen and us at the Atlanta Fed are engaged in a gazillion partnerships. And I would characterize this as at the stage where we are beginning to try to get our heads around all the pilots and all the individual attempts as a way to marshal evidence about what seems to be effective and what their costs might be. And we're very much in the pilot lessons learned sort of phase of all this. I dropped in kind of the link to the description of our CCDF experiment, but that's not a policy that's actually been implemented. It was an analysis of the sorts of policies that you might think about implementing, about what their costs might be, but it's still abstract, and most of these are still pretty abstract or in flight. And in flight means is that we have not yet sort of collected the data. So I know that both of our organizations are very keen on kind of working with people to think through what individual pilots might look like. And it's not entirely clear that there's a generic answer to this. In fact, it's kind of clear to me that there isn't a generic answer to this, and you need to actually, so I liked kind of Karen's setup for, really beginning to collect information from the people who are affected by these things and think about the bundle of things that really directly address the issues being confronted by the people in your community. And that's not going to be the same in every community.
And one other thing that, just if I can build upon what you're saying, Dave, one other thing, when we started in 2018. Atlanta Fed's been around a lot longer than we have. But when we started in 2018, we started by talking to benefits recipients and community-based organizations that were delivering services to them. And we asked them, hey, is benefits cliff an issue that you're facing? And we heard roundly from everyone, yes. And then we went, okay, great. Why don't we reach out to legislators? Why don't we reach out to the agencies distributing the benefits? Why don't we reach out to the think tanks? And at the time, what we heard was overwhelmingly, wait, I think we already solved that problem. I don't think it's a problem anymore. Or I've never heard of this problem. What are you talking about? Or it's a problem, but of the list of priorities, not the biggest problem. So given that benefits recipients and community-based organizations were clear that this was a problem, and that agencies and legislators were not, this gap is the thing to address. And that's why we're trying to amass the data and the stories here, because this has also been a massive storytelling and story building effort. I understand that you all are keen there's a lot of conversation already started here, which is awesome. But what I have seen actually is getting people to even understand that there is a problem has been a big piece of this.
I think if I might take a second, and then we'll get to Sarah's question and just build on this. I mean, this is obviously going to be a larger component of the Lake Champlain Chamber's advocacy moving forward. And, I'd invite any of you folks to reach out, just advocacy@vermont.org. This is something we want to address. We've started trying to build, this kind of came out of trying to build a benefits calculator that built on the JFO basic needs study, and found it incredibly difficult. So one thing we've been playing with as a potential solution is a single sign-on, and then a single portal for which Vermonters can go and see their interactions with their state government. And then also adding to that, universal gating metrics that get you into a program so that you understand, if I've gone through this program, I'm eligible for these other ones, and break down the silos, even within AHS, Agency of Human Services, break down those silos so that if a person's entering the door in one place for assistance from Vermont state government, other people across Montpelier know that that person's eligible for assistance, so that the assistance that's there is most efficaciously used. One other thing, and then I'll go to Sarah's question, is there's currently a bill right now to kind of look at how we rework our JFO basic needs budget. That's H521. And that might be a good venue to start building a basic needs budget that also then can better incorporate benefits, with assistance and tax benefits at different levels of wages, rather than just setting a really kind of unrealistically high livable wage that we have trouble meeting with policy. So Sarah was our next question. If you want to go ahead and unmute.
Sure, I think it's been answered in part. I was curious, you both mentioned that the ultimate goal is policy change to eliminate benefits cliffs. And I was curious if you had more information about what exact policies you're talking about. It sounds like from what Dave was just saying that there are a couple of sort of pilots testing some potential specific benefits programs, but I was curious if you all had more guidance for us.
Yeah, there are, and they're all over the place. There's some HHS examinations of how you might think about asset mapping of various benefits so that they're, SNAPy and T and extended TANF to help sort of deliver resources at the time they're most needed for somebody's sort of journey onto something better. In the state of Tennessee, we're working with the state government there to think about deploying unused TANF funds in the service of resolving some benefit cliffs. So they're working on some pilots and we're assisting them. So everyone seems to be, and the CCDF thing in Florida that we described, we also have a comparable effort in Illinois that we're doing, which is about, well, okay, within the confines, and we understand this completely, and Karen does, everybody does, that, you know, we have to take as given what the federal rules were in many of these cases, and then to think about how two things, how given the constraints that you face, how might we kind of use what flexibility we have to alter the rules and eligibility rules on some of these programs. And then also just to kind of demonstrate for the purposes of advocacy to our federal representatives and our federal institutions, how rules might effectively be changed. I saw in chat this notion that the state, you know, when I said the return to the taxpayer, the state doesn't get all of that benefit. We recognize that. And of course, in any analysis that we do with these tools, we can break it down between what the return to the state is and what the return to the federal government is. But it's a little bit of a problem that typically the return is not local as much as it is federal. And the solutions therefore, and that needs to be pointed out to federal policymakers so that they can respond accordingly to the needs of the people and communities.
I'd also just add, not to plug our own website, this is like a non-revenue generating, like we put out there for folks. Benefitsclip.com has a whole section on policy, and it's not Leap Fund's recommendation. It's like, what are other people doing in the space? So I'm gonna just put the link in the chat, but what we've tried to do, it's not a complete list, but we do try and keep it updated. And it's both what policies are being put forth and proposed at both the state and the federal level, and also policy platforms by other organizations around the country. So if it's helpful, I hope it is, it might be another resource to address this, Sarah.
Yeah, and I'll add that one of the things we're working on, which should be available pretty soon, meaning within the next couple of months, is actually a policy simulator comparable to our dashboards, where you might be able now to, well, you will be able to sort of examine your own potential set of interventions and understand how they interact with the benefit cliff issues and with the revenues associated with those particular alternatives. So we're not as cool as Karen in that I don't have a
What?
I don't have a good place to send you, but she posts the stuff we do all the time. So she's a good place to start.
So let's move on to Connie, and then we'll have Ellie after that.
Hi, thanks, Austin and everyone. My name's Connie Beal. I'm the Working Bridges Initiative Director with United Way of Northwest Vermont. And I just want to sort of send a message of support in that, as Working Bridges has been around now 16 years, we've seen benefit cliffs with employees that we work with within workplaces through resource coordination for years. And this shows up in a lot of different ways, from employees that decline overtime or or leave the workforce entirely to stay within income limits for things like housing or childcare benefits, or even for healthcare benefits. And so, often through our work with employers, we're thinking about ways to pilot or partner. And I think that's another avenue to think about strategy. How can we disrupt this cycle of cliffs to sort of smooth out the cliffs? I think as we think about practical ways and sort of the tools of calculators, it would be really great for us to think about ways we can take take a scan of the partners in community that are doing work within workplaces, because so much of what's important is that last mile, like what's happening for employees at that last mile of a benefit or a resource, and how are they integrating and navigating the resources into their lives. And whether it's through a trusted person in their life, a financial coach, an employer, all of those decisions that are made in those places, I think are really, that's an important consideration for any pilot that we try. But I love that we're really talking about this too, because this is something that we all know is there, and it's really complicated. It's going to take all of our heads together trying to figure out a way to make this better for employers and employees. Thanks.
And I would just add, I think we really look forward to convening partners such as Connie and working on this at a Vermont state level. I think it'll something that'll likely never be done, and that's why we've considered this as a crucial part of the biennial joint fiscal office basic needs budget, because it is something, as policy changes, and we've all seen policy often tends to layer and kind of just be added on to past policy. We're going to want to understand where we might be creating cliffs that people could accidentally go over or might end up parking at out of fear of going over. So Dave or Karen, anything to add on that?
I'll only add that I'll say two things. One is that we are, Karen, Shoshana, and our team here at the Atlanta Fed, we talk a lot. We're in partnerships and communications with both local United Ways and the national United Way. So we're all trying to work together to kind of not to provide a collective set of tools and assistance that helps people who are going to be the ones who solve these problems to move forward as fast as they can. So if anybody is interested in further discussion, feel free to reach out to us, certainly at the Atlanta Fed. And we would be glad to explore how we might be of help to your specific efforts in your specific communities.
Okay, well, why don't we move on to our last question? Go ahead and unmute.
Is that me? So hi, everybody. I'm Eli. I'm from the Working Communities Challenge in the Greater Barrie area, and we are funded by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. And our top priority is looking at the benefits cliffs. And we didn't know when we started that there was a calculator out there. And so we're learning a lot and compiling a lot of resources and doing bill tracking. And it's our goal, and I know Austin just spoke to this, to have a task force, a statewide task force. We're looking really locally and have a pilot of 10 women that we're working with. And we have employers, partners, we have economic development partners, and then we have social service partners. And what we're seeing is initiatives that can come together from those people being in the same room that can fill in those gaps. And sometimes it's small initiatives that are put together to, maybe if somebody loses their 3 squares, a number of food programs can come in to alleviate that gap as the person moves to the next level. So everybody in this room, I'm hoping that we can all, be a part of a task force to really look at this more closely.
And congratulations on your new boss.
Well, folks, I think we'll leave it at that. This is quite the topic of conversation to have early on a Monday morning. So thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. Thank you to both Karen and Dave for offering up some of your time and expertise this morning. And as I said, we hope that this kind of serves as the start of a larger conversation. Please reach out to us. the LCC is really interested in, first kind of breaking down the black box algorithm that exists at, the nexus of our tax system and our benefit system, as well as kind of understanding some of the pressure points in the economy that are affecting folks at a household level that just aggregate up to make structural problems in Vermont's economy. And then after that, we want to help employers better understand that and better address it. Just as Karen is doing on a day-to-day basis as well. And then finally, we want to make sure that there's policy implemented that makes it so that we don't have to do that at an employer individual level, that our state government operates in a easy enough to understand and transparent way that that bringing in an additional dollar of wages will not be met with a disproportional amount of loss of benefits. So we're really excited to work on this and make this start this journey with all of you. And thank you for taking the first step with us.
Thanks all.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks.